Let's go over greatest common. Let's go over lowest common multiple and greatest common factor. These can get tricky if you overthink it, overdo it. Um, Throughout all the lessons, everyone's being taught like greatest common or lowest common multiple of, let's say, 3 and 7. And what you do is you go through and say, okay, well, then you just find the multiples of 3 and so on till we get to 1. Then you find all the multiples of 7, and then you decide, hey, look, there's one that's common in both of them, and there's my lowest common multiple for 3 and 7 is 21. Well, there's a much easier way, in my opinion, to do it. And so let's back up just a little bit here. And let's look at this a different way. Let's say I have 30 and 70. And I want the lowest common multiple. Well, to get that, you just simply take 30 and find the factors of it. The base, the prime factors. So I would say that's 2 times 15, and that's a prime number. And 5 and 3. So there's my multiples, or there's my numbers for 30 is 2, 5, and 3. Those are just my prime factors. And I'm going to do the same thing for 70. So 70 turns out to be 35 and 2. And that turns out to be 5 and 7. So 2, 5, and 7. And what I want to do is I want to look at it and say, look, I have a 2 and a 5 on both sides, but I need a 3 over here, and I need a 7 over here. So I'm going to put that times 7 times 3. Now they all have the exact same factors. So I multiply them both all back together again. So I've got 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 3 is 30. 30 times 7 is 210. And that's the lowest common multiple for 30 and 70. Okay, let's do another one just so you can kind of see it in action. If I have 15 and 20, for example, that's 3 times 5, and that's 5 times 4, and 4, we're just going to do 2 times 2. Okay, so we find the prime factors, and with that I say, oh look, I've got a 5 here and a 5 here. Now this 3 has to be over here, so I'm going to put that times 3 there, and I need a couple 2's over here. What your goal is to get all the numbers together. So all the numbers the same, excuse me. So we have 2, 2, 3, 5, 2, 2, 3, 5. Now they're the same, we multiply them back together. 5 times 2 is 10, times 2 is 20, times 3 is 60. So the greatest, or the lowest common multiple is 60. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say 75 and 100. Okay, first we take 75 and we say, oh, that's just 25 times 3, and that's just 5 times 5. Okay, find the prime numbers, so 5 times 5 times 3. Okay, now I'm going to do 100, and that's just 5 times 20, then 5 times 4, and that's 2 times 2. So I have 5 times 5 times 2 times 2. And I have 2 5s here, 2 5s here. So what do I need? I'm going to need a 3 over here. I'm going to need a couple 2's over here. Okay, now they all have the same factors, and so let's multiply them all back together again. Okay, 5 times 5 is 25, and I'm going to do times 2 is 50, times 2 is 100, times 3 is 300 is our lowest common multiple. Okay, that means if I did 75 times 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5, and same with the 100, the lowest one that they're going to have in common is at 300. Now let's talk about greatest common factor. Okay, greatest common factor is just the largest number that everything goes into. So if I have, say, 10 and 20, well, what are the factors of 10? And I just list all the factors. 1 and 10. 2 times 5, and 3 and 4 don't go into it, so it's just 1, 2, 5, and 10. And that's how I do it, is I just say, okay, here's 1 and 20, comma, 2 and 10. Does 3 go into 20? No. 4 does. 4, comma, 5. 4 times 5 is 20. And you just do that until you meet right up in the middle. And we look at it and we say, okay, what's the biggest number we have? We have 1's in common. We have 2's in common. We have 5's in common. And we have 10's in common. So we see our biggest one that we have in common with both of them is right there. So the greatest common factor is 10. Let's look at it another way. If I have, say, 110 and 50, and I want to know what the greatest common factor is. Just like I used the factors for the other one, I can do the same thing here. That's the same thing as 11 times 10. And then I have 5 times 2. Okay? And here I have 5 times 10 and 5 times 2. What I can do here is just say, okay, circle all the ones I have in common. So I have a 5 and a 5. I have a 2 and I have a 2. Okay, awesome. Now multiply them together. What's 5 times 2? 10. So my greatest common factor is 10. Okay. Let's say 320 and I don't know, 75. I want to know what my greatest common factor is. 75 is just 5 times 75 is just 25 times 3, and that's just 5 times 5. Okay, so can I pull a 5 out of there? Absolutely. But let's break this down just a little bit first. I've got 2 times, what would that be? That would be 160, and that would be 2 times 80, and that would be 2 times 40, that would be 2 times 20, 2 times 10, and 2 times 5. So there's all our factors, and we circle the ones that it has in common. So we have a 5 and a 5. The rest here are 2's, and that's just a 3. So our greatest common factor is 5 between all of those. Okay, another example. Let's say I have 76 and I have 48. Okay, 76, that's just 2 times, what would that be, 38. And then I just factor them all the way down. 2 times 19. And 19 is a prime number, so that's as far as I can go. And I have 2 times 24. 2 times 12. 2 times 6, and 2 times 3. So now we have a 2 in common, another 2 in common, and that's the only thing we have in common, so let's multiply them together. The greatest common factor is 4. So those are different ways of doing it. Hopefully that helps. I'm going to go ahead and link a couple of videos to show how to do them both. Let me know if you need any extra help.